should get in very comfortably. Some issues are there with we upgrade
this waiting room feature that is for security purpose. That's a good thing.
We are doing that. Yeah,
but somebody should monitor it. Right now, it is. I'm getting a message saying 5 people are waiting in the waiting room.
Yes. There are 4 of them are monitoring actually. They check the names and everything.
Excellent. Yeah.
So, Mr. Ravi, how's your operation started or not yet?
Sir, actually, we have 3 plants. The Oragadam plant is about 70% up and running.
All right.
The Pune plant, we have had a lot of challenges because Maharashtra is in a very difficult situation. Whereas in Baroda, I think we are more or less about 60% up.
Okay.
And fortunately for me, I don't have too many migrant workforce. I think probably about 10% of them are part of this migrant category, which I think some of them have gone back within Tamil Nadu. And, either their parents are scared to send them or, young people, that's the category we are a little bit challenged right now. But I think in another couple of weeks, we should be a little bit okay. But I think the biggest challenge we see is demand pickup is not there in the market.
That's right.
So, it's kind of, how do you synchronize both, Otherwise you lock your cash.
Yeah, easy to produce, but difficult to sell, no?
Yeah.
Demand pickup is not there because downstream activity has not started or people are holding money.
I think a lot of people are trying to recalibrate, because, this last 2 weeks only things have been a little bit opened up. So I would expect, but in some industries like food and pharma, there is a demand pickup. But on the capital goods industry, we still see I think we would still see another 6 to 7 months for capex cycle to revive,
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time for people to survive.
Yeah, I think it's, when I say, if you look at our gross capital formation, I think we dropped from something like 10% to 6%, So I think that needs to really pick up. And right now we see only not many private capex happening,
Good evening, Mr. Peter.
Good evening, everybody. Satyamurthy here.
No, I will tell one of my guys to just now speak to you. Some people are having this issue today because of upgradation. I'll tell him to speak to you right away. Shankar will talk to you, my technical guy.
Captain, sir, live streaming started.
Wait. Yeah, just speak to Mr. Peter Rimmel. I'm shared his number with you. Okay, he's not able to get in.
Already.
I sent his number. Just speak to him and explain to him.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this may be.
I already shared with him. Okay, just speak to him and bring him in.
Then let me connecting connecting தான் வந்திருக்கு இன்னும் வரல.
So your waiting room is where they get checked and come in, is
Yes,
it?
there are 4 of them, sir. They check the name, the identification, the email ID sometime. Something, the name and other thing doesn't match. For example, known like today, Moto G6, we know who it is actually. So if the people come without identification Moto G, then we don't admit them. This is Mrs. Satyamurthy, her Moto G6. Hey Ashish, how are you? Hi, good evening, Pankaj. Welcome. Let me, Pankaj, introduce you to the speaker, Mr. Narayanan. You already met him earlier.
Okay, no problem.
Mr. Srini is there.
Well, no
I think
problem.
Peter has got some issue in getting in, so I told Mr. Shankar to connect with him and sort out that issue. He is unable to get in. Moto G, I'll admit that actually. Done.
Zingo with order பண்ணிருக்கு.
அவ்வளவுதான் இது அமிஸ்டர்னா முடிஞ்சது.
Group Captain Peter sir is online.
Shankar is in? Shankar? You played it?
Yes, yeah, Peter sir is online.
Mr. Peter, sorry, I think some mix-up. We upgraded the system from Zoom. Since the time upgraded, we got downgraded.
So the upgrading has the function of being dysfunctional then.
Yeah. Now you can go live.
Okay.
Shankar, you can put all on mute. You can go on live now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can go ahead now.
Yes, sir.
Sure?
Sure. I will take care, sir.
Okay, fine. Thanks. Yeah. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very warm welcome to another edition of our MMA live webinar. You are all aware we have been doing this since the lockdown has been declared on 25th of March. Since then, we have done over 74 live webinars and number of other programs watched by a couple of lakhs people over the day. And I think we have been immensely satisfied and thoroughly enjoyed what we are doing. And we are indeed grateful to Conrad Stifting, especially Mr. Peter and Mr. Pankaj and the team who have been a great source of support to us, which enabled us to bring some of the outstanding talks like the one which you are going to hear this evening. Now, before I call upon the distinguished speakers and the chairman who are already arrived moderator, let me briefly tell you, we have already finalized the program for the entire month of June and May also. But we'll briefly tell you what's happening besides today's program. Tomorrow morning, we have effective project management. We have an international speaker from Chicago, Mr. Manu Ora, is going to be talking because project management one, which is, I've got a serious issues today with the COVID and a lot of projects which are going to be really the floats are lost and the contract get reached, how they are going to redo the whole thing. So it's very important for many corporates. We are doing this, and tomorrow we are also bringing in large number of management students. They are the future of our country and who are aspiring entrepreneurs. We expect more than 4,000 to 5,000 people watch this program tomorrow. Then on Friday, the 29th, we at 6 p.m. we have got politics under next gen leaders. We are really this we are doing it with Conrad Stifting mainly to understand what is the issue the next gen political leaders are going to face. We have got outstanding 4 politicians to come and speak to us. Tejasvi Surya from Member of Parliament Lok Sabha. Then Mr. Kumaramangalam, Congress Working President from Tamil Nadu Congress Committee. Then Mr. Paramasivam is a member of Legislative Assembly from Tamil Nadu. And to moderate, we got the young Priyadashini Ragul, the National President of Next Gen Political Leaders and also Advocate Supreme Court. Then on June 3rd, we have again an interesting event. I'll tell one more, so then we go on to the today's event. COVID-19 election reforms. None other than Mr. C.S. Krishnamurthy, former Chief Election Commissioner, is going to come and speak. Post-pandemic, what is going to happen today? Is there any change for election reforms? And what is going to happen in terms of the political leaders themselves? How they're going to look at election in the new normal? So we are going to have some serious discussion with Dr. Krishnamurthy. Please do block your diary. And one final thing, on Saturday the 6th, not to be missed event again, by leadership and purpose in turbulent times. We're going to one of the outstanding speaker is Dr. Nandu Kishore. Dr. Nandu Kishore is the professor of Indian School of Business and also guest lecturer in London Business School. And is a former president of and head of Asia, Africa, and of Nestle Switzerland. So he is a thought leader, one of the outstanding speakers. He's going to be he's agreed to speak on this subject on Saturday the 16th. Coming to today's event, you all know what's happening today after the PM's economic package, different strokes. We actually want to discuss this under the magnifying glass. And we have got two outstanding speakers who are going to be talking to us this evening. Just a while from now, I'll introduce both the speaker and the moderator. Before that, let me have the privilege of welcoming all the viewers watching this program live on webinar, live on YouTube, and also who are joining us from different sources. And let me now welcome Ravi Purushothaman, President Danfoss, and is also the Senior Vice President of MMA. To deliver the formal welcome address, a few words of introduction about Mr. Ravi Purushothaman. He's a business leader with 25 years of experience in various roles, ranging from sales, marketing, strategy, and general management, merger and acquisition, and much more. And he is currently the Senior Vice President of Madras Management Association, actively engaged in startups, ecosystem, industry, and university engagement. Is alumni of College of Engineering, Gindi, and IIM Ahmedabad, and Singularity University of California. May I request Mr. Ravi Purushothaman, please deliver the welcome address. You can unmute yourselves, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Group Captain. I think it's indeed my privilege to deliver this formal welcome address at this unique online conversation on a very interesting theme, in my view, Prime Minister's Economic Package, Different Strokes, being organized by MMA and ORF with support of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I think I consider this, it is an honor for me to actually welcome this evening Dr. S. Narayanan, a former economic advisor to Prime Minister and Revenue Secretary, Government of India. I just had a very recent opportunity to welcome him during the February budget session, where we had a face-to-face meeting in MMA. But this time it's probably, I had the chance to do it on a virtual platform, sir. Mr. R. Srinivasan, editor, Hindu Business Line, and also Mr. Peter Rimmel, herzlich willkommen heute Abend, resident representative, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I also take this opportunity to also welcome all the MMA members all over Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry, members of ORF, NGF, and of course a large number of participants from all over the country who have joined us this evening for this exciting session. I think since there are a number of guests this evening, I just want to give you a quick overview of MMA. I think MMA is actually older than me. It's already 6 decades, in existence. And I think MMA has been doing remarkable work in propagating management movement among corporate members, students, and public at large. I think today we have about 7,000 corporate houses, industries, professionals, and academicians and executives on the roles of MMA. I think we are currently doing about 750 executive development activities, including seminars from top management, for top management. And of course, we have about 45,000 executives and entrepreneurs who have benefited, especially the last 1 year. I'm also happy to acknowledge that, Group Captain, under whose leadership MMA has gone from strength to strength. And they've been very resilient even during this lockdown. I can tell you it's been pretty engaging over the last 2 months, where MMA, especially under Group Captain's leadership, they've been doing very remarkable work and bringing some outstanding programs to all on this virtual platform. But I think today's context, the discussion on Prime Minister's economic package, Different Strokes, is very timely and apt. I think considering the fact that the prevailing sentiment, both in the economy as well as in the business, and there's quite a bit of uncertainty around all of us. I think India has been in the lockdown for almost 2 months, and Centre has come up with this package, which I think probably we will hear more from Dr. Narayanan this evening. I think there's quite a lot of people on the online platform now. I welcome each one of you for this exciting event. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank CAS, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, for their continued support to MMA. Both Mr. Peter Rimmel and Pankaj, big thank you to you all. And also thank ORF and NGF for joining the MMA this evening as one of the supporting partners for the event. I also like to take this opportunity to welcome all the past presidents of MMA, my colleagues from the management committee, members of MMA, distinguished invitees, management student members, viewers all over the globe watching this program live, both on YouTube, Facebook, and MMA Live webinar. Wish you all a very exciting evening, and I would hand it over back to Group Captain.
Thank you, Ravi, for your welcome address. And as you rightly, aptly put across, we have been partners with Conrad Stifting for over the last 3 decades. And today, what MMA is there, maybe one of the fundamental is support from the Conrad Stifting. We are indeed privileged and proud with our association. We are able to bring in some outstanding top quality management programs. And let me now invite Peter Rimmel, who is currently the resident representative of Conrad Stifting India, to deliver the introductory remarks. Before that, briefly, I will introduce him, his profile. He has a first law degree from Pressburg University and also MA in geography. After working as a jurist, judge, and lecturer, he took public office, head of the division of the State Ministry of Interior in Saxon, Germany, from November 1991 to 2000. And he was the advisor for the governance reforms for GIZ, that is German International Cooperation, to the Ministry of Administrative Reforms and the Anti-Corruption Commission of the Republic of Indonesia, where he served for over 7 years. He then moved to Rawada and the principal advisor for good governance and justice program. Earlier, he was the resident representative of Lebanon, director of rule of law program Middle East and North Africa of Conrad Stifting, and now presently is the resident representative of Conrad Stifting in India. May I request Mr. Peter Rimmel please deliver the introductory remarks. Over to Mr. Peter Rimmel. Mr. Peter? Mr. Peter Rimmel, you there? அவருக்காரா மேல கொண்டு வரது மியூட் இருக்கா அன்மியூட் பண்ண சொல்லிட்டு மேல வர
muted himself.
Mr. Peter Rimmel?
Yes, I was muted by the host, and that I could not do myself. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about it. Yes.
Thank you, Group Captain. Let's just hope that the COVID crisis is not lasting 3 decades like our corporation has done already. Dear Dr. Narayan, Mr. Srinivasan, ladies and gentlemen, currently we find ourselves within lockdown 4.0. We are now nearly 3 months into the reign of COVID-19, and so far it does not look as if the virus is going away soon, and its stronghold on humanity will still be there. With infections on the rise and casualties mounting, I look at the figures, especially in India, every day. We are all primarily concerned with containing the threat by all means possible. Our means, however, do not come cheap. Today, we discuss the momentous impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy and the political reply to it. The cost of the political measures so far and the worldwide production threaten to grow into a disastrous economic crisis that will target the weakest in society, though none will be unscathed. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's economic package comes on the coattails of similar responses by governments around the world. Now, that is no surprise because all economy experts, all experts advising governments are more or less digging into the same toolbox. Please allow me, therefore, to give you some perspective on the issue and to let me quickly lay out the state of Germany's economy and our political responses. Maybe then we can discuss in comparison. Perhaps it's partly German nature, but even before Corona hit, politicians and economists were expecting an economic downturn to hit us in 2020-21. So when Corona made our lives grind to a halt unexpectedly, Germans were at least partially prepared. Nonetheless, closures hit us hard too. The federal government is currently expecting our gross domestic product to contract by more than 6% in 2020 compared to last year. The service sector was hit hardest by the crisis, as might be expected. India, with its large informal sector, faces a similar, most likely even more challenging situation, as we will undoubtedly hear in a few minutes. Apart from the obvious reasons for the economic downturn heralded by the lockdown itself, in the long term, Germany will suffer immensely from the stoppage of international production and the breakdown of international trade links in the process. We are an exporting nation, perhaps, and I say that with a characteristic German restraint, the export nation. As such, the production stoppages in countries like China leaves Germany vulnerable, not just regarding domestic consumption, but also by limiting our own capacity for re-export and manufacturing. Around the world, we have witnessed a political knee-jerk reaction towards more autonomy and reducing reliance on foreign goods. In fact, Germany's federal health minister has announced that one of the tenets of Germany's EU Council presidency will be to repatriate important pharmaceutical productions back to Europe. This is, I think, a sensible approach, maybe the European version of Atmanirbharta, and certainly a wake-up call to some in Germany who started to believe that the current international setup of global supply chains would remain unchanged for times to come. However, I must earnestly warn everyone who believes that now is the right time to seek refuge in dreams of national self-dependence as an answer to the crisis. Of course, we see tendencies of protectionism everywhere and putting things back home, but the global economy is unthinkable without the fine network of supply chains and trade network that span the world. They guarantee our prosperity as well as a degree of international peace. We cannot risk that. Instead, I think that a balanced and comprehensive approach is best. We should nationalize or regionalize strategic goods production, especially to alleviate dependency on one country alone. But at the same time, we should try to make our supply chains, which have turned out to be so fragile, fit for the future instead of destroying them. Some even coined the term gated globalization. And I want to give you some responses in Germany to the crisis. Many of the measures will seem familiar to you, I believe. What differentiates Germany from others is the fiscal prudence of this and the past governments that now enables us to spend enough money in times of need. Ever since Dr. Angela Merkel was elected Chancellor, and that was in 2005 already, the German government has pushed for fiscal responsibility at the federal and at the state level. And there has been a pronounced effort to reduce our yearly new borrowing and to balance the budget of the federal and the state governments. We call that a black zero. No new debts, but possibly paying back old debts. And this was the policy of the last years. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me give you some specifics of the package still currently in effect in Germany, also some figures. As in India, the main goal is to prevent a deadly wave of defaults across the country. We don't want to ruin the economy, and that's the same approach in India. To this end, the federal government has put aside roughly 450 billion euros to aid the economy. This ranges from small direct assistance to keep struggling enterprises and even solo self-employed and freelancers from defaulting. There is about 50 billion for tax break, another 100 billion in state guarantee, and as much as 800 billion worth for supporting what we call short-term labor, different than India. Maybe that needs to be explained. We hardly don't have any informal sector. Everybody's in a formal employment. And if we ask for short-term labor, the difference is partially paid up to 90% by the state. So that needs extra funds for that too. And we have short-term labor at the moment in many companies. So this is the federal response. And of course, each of the 16 states put in roughly another 150 billion euros. Then we have to see the European level. There was just a new announcement of a proposed fund of 500 billion euros more. what was together. France and Germany suggested it together. Of course, it finds some resistance, but something will happen. And it has, of course, brought up a new struggle for the future of the European Union itself, also in Germany, where they fear that such a compromise solution as presented there would amount to a union of debtors by the back door. And that is what they want to avoid. That's the discussion all the time in Europe. So you see, it's an element not comparable to India, but debts, of course, poorer countries or those who do economically not so well expect that the other ones are paying more for them. And the other ones say, yes, we want to help you, but we don't want to pay off your debts. Currently, we are trying to ease the lockdown in Germany and restart our economic life after much public discussion. To return to my initial remarks on the economic crisis that will follow the virus on its coattails. As in most countries, Germany's politics are now divided not between left and right, but between those who want to remain in lockdown and those who want to reopen the economy everywhere. Apart from growing, an aggressive fringe believes in the lockdown as a part of a worldwide conspiracy. You may have seen that in the press, to subjugate us all. The economic disaster we are facing is the core argument of those in favor of easing the lockdown. So the trade-off between lives on the one side and livelihoods is fast becoming a hot topic of discussion, and sharp political dividends are evident on this issue all across the world, including India, of course. Germany's states have already started to ease the lockdown. India has started to ease the lockdown at different paces. Only over the weekend, the state of Thuringia, one of the southern ones, has declared that it will repeal most remaining lockdown issues, much to the critique of other more cautious states. That may happen here too in a federal system. So the fear that then this one state will bring up the statistics is there all over. But we probably have not seen the end of this debate in Germany. My conclusion would be, as far as Germany is concerned, I have presented some of their political response, economic response, and I hope it will complement the presentations done by our expert of the Indian system. And let's see if India, as I said in the beginning, all economies have the same toolbox. Let's say if India has chosen the right tools or the right mixture of tools. That way, I'd like to hand back and looking forward to interesting presentations and discussions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter, for setting the introductory remarks, which set the tone and also sharing your insight. Today's format of the event today is, let me tell you briefly, PM Economic Package, Different Strokes. We got two outstanding speakers, as I mentioned. Mr. Narayanan, IAS, is going to be the main speaker, and Mr. Srinivasan, editor into Business Line, will also be moderating. He'll also share his insight being head of a business magazine, business newspaper. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Narayanan as well as Mr. Srinivasan. After that, I hand over the session to Mr. Srinivasan. He will set the context of the opening remark. Thereafter, there'll be a talk and conversation. Mr. Narayanan, IAS, is a 1965 batch with nearly 4 decades in public sector, public services in the state of the central government. In development administration, was economic advisor to the Prime Minister in the year 2003 and 2004. Prior to this assignment, Dr. Narayanan served the Government of India as the Finance and Economic Affairs Secretary in the Department of Revenue, Petroleum and Industrial Development. Dr. Narayanan obtained his PhD from Indian Institute of Technology in New Delhi. He has an MPhil Development Economics from the Cambridge University and Master of Business Management Finance from the University of Adelaide. And he graduated in MSc Physics from the University of Madras and from the Madras Christian College, Thambaram. Dr. Narayanan has a single authored 2 books, edited 2 books, and written numerous policy papers, reports, book chapters, and he also writes regularly in newspapers, both locally and internationally, on issues relating to the public policy, governance, and public finance, trade, and energy. He has been a visiting senior research fellow of Institute of South Asian Studies, National University of Singapore, since 2005. Very warm welcome to Narayanan. I think we are indeed privileged to have you with us to share the insight on one of the most deliberated, more debated subject today. I think at least I see 3 to 4 debates. At least I get invite on this subject every day. Now, let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Srinivasan, the editor of Indo Business Line. He is a mass media communication specialist. He spent a decade in sales and marketing before becoming a journalist. The motive that impelled him towards this shift is a desire to tell the truth, a need to be a change agent rather than a passive participant, and just the enjoyment of writing and telling the tale are the central to what he is today and what he wants to do, and either in his professional or in personal life. His experience spans in the area of journalism in general and in business dailies, assessing, valuing, analyzing the trends and potential outcome of macroeconomics, political and business environment developments is a core skill set. Specializes in news and quality management and also ethical gatekeeping, writing, editing and designing product and development and strategy, people management, training and communication. Ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to Mr. Srinivasan. You got two outstanding personalities today to speak on this very, very relevant subject today. Over to you, Mr. Srinivasan, to set the context and take it forward. Over to you, Mr. Srinivasan.
Thank you very much, Group Captain Vijay Kumar. First of all, let me start by thanking the Madras Management Association for inviting me to be a part of the proceedings today. MMA and Business Line have been old partners, not perhaps as long a history of cooperation as with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, because we are in our 27th year, but we have been, very closely associated with MMA. MMA has also been a good friend to Business Line and has supported us in a number of our ventures. And I'm really, delighted at the kind of work that the MMA has been doing. I have, in my career, worked in many cities around the country. Let me tell you, this is the most active of the management associations, or indeed other business associations that I've come across, and the one which comes up with the most effective programming, I should say. Discussions and seminars which have a lot of relevance for their members and a lot of learning for them. So well done, MMA, well done, Group Captain. Thank you very much. As we entered the discussion today, I was just looking at the headlines for tomorrow. We are a newspaper after all, so tomorrow's news comes to us first here. And the news is not very good. Two recent studies have been released today, one by the State Bank of India's Economic Research Wing, and the other by the credit rating agency CRISIL. Both of them essentially are telling us that the economy is falling off a cliff. We are going to witness a very sharp contraction in economic growth. Next year will be negative growth to the extent of 6.5% or over is one estimate. The coming quarter could see GDP shrink by more than 25%. And that is an immediate, direct result of the lockdown, which we started towards the last week of March and which continues till date. Several questions come to mind on the response from the government to the crisis. The one, of course, is the management of the disease, the pandemic, and the other is the response to the economic crisis induced by the lockdown. The government, of course, has announced a highly publicized and much debated so-called stimulus package. The headline number is 20 lakh crore rupees. Although by now, enough analysis has been done to demonstrate that the actual size of the fiscal stimulus, the money which the government will actually spend and inject into the economy, is likely to be about less than 1/10 that number. The balance largely coming in the form of, monetary measures announced by the Reserve Bank of India, which are more in the nature of a potential of the amount of liquidity which can be injected into the economy. I say that because it's a potential, because banks the Reserve Bank's responses have all one thing in common, which is that they entirely depend on the banking system to deliver. They've enabled the process, they have opened the liquidity windows, but it's up to the banks to go out and actually lend to businesses and borrowers. That, as we are well aware, and most people here in MMA members are running businesses, and they know that banks have been remarkably reluctant to lend, and nothing has changed to remove that risk aversion. In fact, one would say that certain measures which were included as part of the stimulus program, which was to suspend the insolvency and bankruptcy process, announce moratoriums on debt, and so on, would arguably make the banks even more reluctant to lend. This is very evident by the amount of money that banks are parking every day with the Reserve Bank of India, instead of actually lending the cash which they have on hand to lend, which instead of lending, they're basically depositing it with the Reserve Bank of India every day to the tune of over 8 lakh crore rupees. So, the center then, of course, did come up with a sovereign guarantee for loans extended to medium and small and micro enterprises, which addresses part of the problem, at least the risk awareness of the lenders to go out and lend money to the smaller and more vulnerable borrowers within our economy. But it remains to be seen how the scheme gets executed, how, for instance, somebody operating a small or a tiny unit in Kanyakumari district will actually go about securing a sovereign guarantee from the center in order to get his bank to lend him money. So that's, the details are not there. The statement of intent is there. The detail is as yet unclear. As for the response itself, now on the disease front, we have now had nearly 3 months of lockdown, and the disease appears to be spiking, as the numbers very evidently show. We are now one of the countries with the highest number of infected cases in the world, and that is on a very, very low testing base relative to the size of our population. The second is that we are also in the process of ending the lockdown and opening up the economy around the time that the infection itself appears to be peaking. We have opened up some form of movements, flights have resumed, some limited train services have resumed, and perhaps next week, no later than that, many local administrations will be forced to reopen some form of public transport, all of which means increased contact, increased mixing of populations, and probably increased risk of infection. But the opening up of the lockdown has become pretty much inevitable given the very, very sharp impact on the economy. So the challenge now really is, and I think I would request Dr. Narayanan to look at this question in particular, is to examine the quality of response of the government. So is the fiscal stimulus program, let's agree at, say, the 10% of the nominal headline figure. So is this, around 2 lakh crores or so, or little less than that? Is that adequate? Has the timing been right? Have we announced the stimulus a little too early into the program, into the progress of the disease? Because there appears to be some consensus that economic recovery to even something approximating normal is quite some time away. So are we looking, how much further away? 6 months, three quarters, a full year, maybe longer? It's not very clear at the moment, but a minimum 6 months appears to be the general consensus amongst economic observers. So 6 months is a long time for businesses to manage with a scenario of either nil, depending on the sector you're in, or very, very sharply reduced cash flows, rising debt, and of course the a disrupted marketplace, which is going to mean that even if you are personally able to restart operations, you may not be able to actually reach your customers effectively, nor will all your supply chains, be working the way they were. International trade, for instance, was severely disrupted for a number of reasons. Cargo movement has been impacted, crew movement has been impacted. So there are a whole lot of unknowns in this picture. So what exactly then will be the new normal? I think that's the question that we will look at this evening. We'll look at in specific, because the title of the program is, the stimulus program, Different Strokes. So let's look at, which are the different people who are impacted, different classes of people, that is individual customers, MSMEs in particular, and larger organized business, as well as the principal stakeholders in this ecosystem, which is your promoters, your investors in companies, your workers in these companies. So how has this has a sort of response addressed this very different kind of challenges faced by all these different stakeholders? And finally, perhaps we can look at the timing and the sequencing of the response. Like I said, that given the fact that the kind of economic challenges are likely to continue for quite a substantial time, have we sort of timed our response right, or should we have kept some powder dry for a future crisis? And finally, also look at some of the compositions of this stimulus package, where a number of actually forward-looking reform measures have been packaged in as an immediate response to the COVID, because possibly taking advantage of the fact that a sort of emergency exists in the country today. Most other democratic processes and systems are in a stage of suspension. So I would like to invite Dr. Narayanan first to share his thoughts on the subject, and then perhaps we could go into a discussion and maybe take some questions from the audience. Over to you, Dr. Narayanan.
Thank you very much, Srinivasan, and thank you, Group Captain, for inviting me over. It's always a great privilege to be here with the MMA. And what we have before is a very difficult topic. So, Srinivasan, how much time will you give me initially? 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go?
15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Right.
We are economically, we are not in a good shape at all. We are not in a good shape because even before the COVID started, the economy was slowing down. And it was slowing down. The opposition was pointing out that the economy was slowing down due to several reasons. And some of it had to do with certain policies, and some of it had to do with lack of demand, and some of it had to do with our inability to export our goods. So it is already going down. And now that the COVID has struck us after March, the fall has been much more precipitous. And as Ravi pointed out, we are looking at something like falling over a cliff. And we are probably looking at a steep negative growth, at least certainly in this quarter, and perhaps very, very marginal or close to zero growth for the whole year. So we are in that way, we are in difficulty. Was the lockdown well timed? Perhaps the calculation, I would say that yes, the lockdown was well timed, but what they did not take into account, and I'm surprised that they did not take this into account, was the large magnitude of informal labor who would insist on going back to the states. If they had thought this through and if they made arrangements for the informal labor to stay back and to continue, I think a lot of this pain could have been avoided. And Mr. Srinivasan, you are well aware that in Tamil Nadu, the egress and ingress of migrant workers, even though there are a lot of migrant workers, has been comparatively small. And the reason that it has been small is the institutional response of providing them adequate food and PDS and 10 kilos of rice and making them stay has ensured, definitely that has been there, but not to the extent that you see in Delhi and Mumbai. So perhaps there's a lesson here. There's also a lesson which we can learn from Kerala in terms of their management. They are having to manage people who are now coming back from the Middle East. That's a different kind of problem altogether. So this is something which perhaps has I would say, hit the policymakers in the middle of this lockdown. And now you have a situation, if you have 1 million people walking back, you cannot have social distancing. You cannot have any of the restrictions that you want to have if you have such a mass of people moving. And therefore, in a way, some of the relaxations have happened because it is not possible to have the kind of social distancing, the kind of sophisticated protection that you could have had if this movement of people had not been there. The plus side of it is, and we must give government credit to this, that those 2 or 3 months has enabled the government to prepare itself to tackle the crisis better. I mean, if there had been no lockdown and if we had seen these kind of numbers in March and April, I don't think we would have had hospitals, we would have had PPE equipment, we would have had even face masks or even ventilators to manage this. And today we have a situation where, except for Maharashtra, where even now only 70% of the beds are filled up, the other states still have beds more than patients. And luckily they have separated into isolation, serious, ICU kind of cases. And so we are finding that the recovery rate, which we are having at about nearly close to 38 to 40%, is a very, very good recovery rate compared to international standards. And the deaths, we don't know how far these numbers are real or not real, but a death rate of about 4,000 in an infection rate of 1,30,000-35,000 certainly compares very, very favorably with what we have seen in the United States or in UK or in Spain or in Italy. It compares very favorably. Of course, as I said, some of this data is a very big question mark. The one way to look at the data is always to look at the hospital beds and see, are they full? Are the ventilators all exhausted? Are people waiting in the corridor? And we see that that's not happening as yet. And we hope it will not happen ever. It's not happening as yet. So one is preparedness. The other thing is quick recovery, early recovery, maybe because we have a younger population, etc. So against this background, the Prime Minister has announced his big package. And we need to look at this package from really, I will just describe, I will not make value judgments on the elements of the package that we will go into in a discussion with Mr. Srinivasan later. But I think it's necessary to de-scramble the package and look at what exactly is being tried. And really, they are looking at 3 boxes: the box of survival, the box of revival, and the box of economic growth. And you can see that though over the 5 announcements, there are different bits of each in different tranches. But if you look at it, clearly they fall into these 3 boxes. So let us look at what they are looking into the survival box. The survival box basically is a very, very simple box. In the survival box, they have announced, okay, free grant of, the most important thing, the survival box they have announced is that one card, one PDS. That is an extremely important step, because if the guy is walking from Delhi to Ranchi and he gets food on the way, or 5 kilos of rice, and his family is sitting there in Ranchi without any food, I mean, it doesn't help, because he was remitting money for them to buy food. So the single card, single PDS system will enable him to get whatever is due, as well as his family to get what is due. And surprisingly, this was a report of 2011 during Manmohan Singh government, which has been lying there. And they've just followed, they're just implementing that particular report which came out in 2011. So that, I would say, is very crucial. And the moment it's activated, then, because we have enough food grain, we have 72 million tons of food grains. We can't get rid of it fast enough. So the distribution of food, and more and more, in spite of what the media is telling you, different people who have traveled the Delhi to, let us say, Patna road, have said that every 30 to 40 kilometers, there are provisions for providing food for the people who are walking. And these provisions are made by government, by NGOs, by social activities, whatever. But therefore, starvation deaths is something that you are not getting reported in spite of this large migration. Okay, you're getting pain, you're getting people going on cycle, you're getting people having to walk 150, 200 to 300 miles. But deaths due to starvation, in spite of this large movement, you're not getting. So somewhere you are getting this survival line right. And that is what is the first step. And once they go back to the village, the immediate task, the immediate grant is the enlargement of the MNREGA program by another 40,000 crores, which provides them 100 rupee a day work. But of course, again, a caveat here, number of people who have come from skilled jobs, who are doing, let us say, running big earth movers or tractors in construction jobs, they are not going to do this MNREGA jobs. But okay, a lot of people who are working as waiters in hotels, or who are delivering Swiggy and all that, they would happily go for that for a period of time. So this is another aspect of the survival package. Looking at small businesses, two interesting things have been done. One interesting thing, which again, Mr. Srinivasan will bear me out, if you look at the Ambattur cluster and the Gindi cluster, the banks have automatically granted 20% extra working capital and lending limits to all the units which are already current. I mean, if you're going down before the COVID, and COVID is not the reason when you go down, okay, no, it's not for you. But if you're an active unit, when banks are phoning up people and say, okay, I'm giving you 20% extra limit which you can operate. This liquidity is available at the same terms, no extra collateral, etc. And this is actually happening. And you can just call up your Ambattur Association and Gindi Association, and they'll confirm to you that this is happening. The other thing which they have announced, a very good thing, which I don't know how it is happening, as Srinivasan actually pointed out, is this collateral. They are prepared to provide equity support. I mean, excellent idea, but I don't know who is going to do it, how it is going to happen, when it's going to happen. But okay, I would say, I would call it a little bit of a work in progress. The third, I would say, survival package relates to monetary easing, particularly for NBFCs. If this monetary easing had not been announced for NBFCs for 30 to 40,000 crores, I am sure that in these 2-3 months, much more than Templeton, a large number of NBFCs would have found it very, very difficult to meet their requirements, because people have been drawing money out of mutual funds like anything. So I think that big bubble, or that big wave has been somewhat contained. So I would say provision for people who are traveling, provision of food. These I would call this package. I would call it a survival package. If we move further and say, okay, what is it that they are talking about as a revival package? Again, there are 5 or 6 things which are very, very interesting. As you are aware, we have had a hugely bumper crop. The winter wheat crop has been bumper. And because of the relaxations in labor use and all which came in towards the early part of April, the second sowing has also been excellent. Has absolutely been excellent. That means, okay, the next crop, which is in some places a dry crop and some places a continued irrigated crop. I'm talking of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Madhya Pradesh, and those is back to normal. That means agriculture coming into the rain, and we are expecting a normal monsoon. So agriculture coming into the next 3-4 years will be able to sustain itself. It will not be any worse than a bad year, and certainly it will be equal to an average year. And the 2 or 3 very, very good announcements that they have made is one is on the Essential Commodities Act, and to say that they are going to take a lot of stuff out of the Essential Commodities Act, and also to amend the Agriculture Product Marketing Act. And if these 2 are done, quicker these 2 are done, you will see agriculture markets opening up. I would call this, because this is something people like us have been shouting for the last 10 years or so. Open up agriculture interstate, open up products interstate, allow them to market themselves rather than go to designated markets. And okay, it required a crisis to bring this about. If it actually happens, I would call this as big I would say, as big a thing as what happened in 1991 for industry, because this is something agriculture has been waiting for. And simultaneously, the announcement that they are going to pump in 1 lakh of crores into agri-based infrastructure, which includes food processing, which includes roads, accesses, which includes cold chains, etc. I would call this package as a very, very, very good revival and a growth package for agriculture. The third, on the revival side, very interestingly, and I will mention a little bit of politics about it also. I don't want to go over my time. Is that 2 or 3 states, the BJP states, Madhya Pradesh, UP, and in a different extent, Karnataka did it for lands, have announced major reforms in labor laws. Maybe the complaint is they've gone overboard. That out of 38 laws, they have suspended 35 laws for a period of 3 years, which means that a lot of, again, foreign investors have always been saying that your labor laws are too rigid, hiring and firing is impossible, you have too many regulations, etc. It's a 3-year, you're given a 3-year window to this. Of course, Center has come back and told UP that maybe you should rethink about whether you need all these laws to go for all the time like this, but okay. But the fact that the states have taken on themselves this kind of labor reforms at this stage is really looking, let's look at it from Mr. Yogi Adityanath's point of view. He's looking at revival in a different way. He's thinking that all these people are going to come back to my state. If they come back to my state, some of them are skilled. Maybe they will not want to go back to Bombay, Delhi. Maybe only part of them will go on. Then they're going to sit there and they are going to be a liability for me. So unless I create an opportunity for them to become employed and to contribute to the economy, I am going to have a major problem in my hands. And therefore, these are necessary. Let's not forget that even 20, 30 years ago, Kanpur, Banaras, Allahabad were hugely manufacturing centers. Whether you talk of leather, whether you talk of textiles, whether you talk of small industry, now he is talking of one district, one skill. He's thinking of reviving, let us say, Banaras, a particular textiles in Banaras, Kanpur, he's talking of reviving leather. So he's thinking along the terms of using this migrated labor in small, technologically, I would say, semi-skilled enterprises to make these districts self-sufficient. And I would call this a very, very, very good, very good revival plan. And the politics in this is, of course, this has come out of a state. So maybe the center feels, why didn't I think of it? And why is this guy thinking of it? So it's trying to put a little bit of nibble on him to say, go slow kind of thing. But this is party politics. We can get beyond that. And we can look at the structure of what he is doing. Madhya Pradesh is doing this. Karnataka has done something more. It has done for industry. It has said land purchase need not go through land acquisition. You can agglomerate land yourself. And land was a big problem in industry to start up. So I would call this, I will continue to call this the revival phase, and then also the announcements that existing industries can list overseas, more FDI in a lot of sectors, etc., a host of announcements, all box into this revival space. And then you go into the third box, and that is the growth phase. And in the growth phase, they are talking about, it's very interesting. I think we are losing one, we may be losing one particular thread of narrative here, which is a very important narrative. Personally, I do think that the government feels that the 1991 reforms were inadequate. They were inadequate because they provided for industry to grow. And growth of industry made industry promoters and industrialists and the stock markets rich, but made the people poor. So I think you're looking at a different paradigm, a total different paradigm that is being thought of to say, no, big industry going cannot be a solution for economic revival of this country. We need to look at alternatives. I don't think they have all the alternatives in hand, but you can see glimmers of these alternatives in the kind of announcement that they are making. And I think a lot of it, I don't know whether you saw that 2 days back, a group of eminent economists came out with I would call a fairly horrific statement saying that, okay, do whatever you like to take the money away from all the people, take the wealth away, nationalize all the wealth that is available and distribute it to the poor. Okay. The revenue service people came up with a statement like that about 15, 20 days back. So there is a wave. There's a wave of thinking. There's a wave of thinking that the pure industrial reforms enabling big industries to grow does not necessarily lead to equity. It leads to wealth, it leads to GDP growth, but it is getting more and more fragmented. It is more limited to a few people. So therefore, is it possible to look at more small industries, dispersed industries, localized industries, and how do we go about it? And today, Mr. Srinivasan, you'll be aware that 11 states are competing with various people who are coming in. Tamil Nadu, again, you are aware that there are nearly 60 or 70 people from overseas, including Chinese companies, who are coming in and having discussions on a day-to-day basis, meeting the Chief Minister once in 6 days or 7 days. And so is Gujarat. And Gujarat is being monitored directly from PMO. And so is, and these are all new technology companies, replacement of value chains. That means where you can integrate value chains. So they are totally a different set of companies that are coming in. And I am sure you will see some traction in this over a period of time. But this is again further down the road. But it's happening before your eyes. So something very, very different is happening before the eyes. So let's forget the numbers. There's 20 lakh crores, 2 lakh crores, etc. Let's forget the numbers. What I would like is that most of the announcements that have been made, I would like to see them operationalized, because there is a lot of devil in the details, and the details are not at all clear. I see a lot of good things being announced, and I do hope that within the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or at the most 4 weeks, we see them operationalized at the ground level, so that when I walk into my branch manager of my little bank, the bank manager knows exactly what he's going to do for me, what he can do for me. This has not happened. And this has not happened because he has not got any instructions from his boss. He has not got any instructions from RBI or the government. So there is a bit of a logjam that is happening here. The last thing which is holding up revival at this moment is this movement of people. Movement of people back. A lot of people, skilled people, want to come back. But if you are going to say, if the states are going to say, if you come back, you must have a certificate of COVID, and then you must go in for 14 days quarantine. It's a waste of economic manpower. So you need to tackle this. You need to get the industry started so that the manpower comes back and manpower is usefully employed. Lastly, the kind of industry that has come up in the last 2 months is also worth noting. Okay, we are now self-sufficient in PPE equipment. We are self-sufficient in face mask production. We are ourselves making these N95 masks substantially. All our ventilator manufacturers, we used to buy about, all the country used to buy about 8,000 ventilators in a whole year, 8,000 for whole country. I think we are producing close to about 20,000 now on an annual basis. And all this has happened while labor is moving, while there has been missing. And pharmaceutical companies are ramping up, and most pharmaceutical companies are thinking of enlarging in a manner that the large imports from China get at least reduced. So you are going to see a reduction in the trade chain, a reduction in the logistic chain, which again is going to be very good. So this is the overall picture. But when I give you the picture, as I said, there are a lot of buts, because people who are actually running the industry are facing the day-to-day pain, and they do not know where to go to sort out that particular pain. And I don't think there is clarity at the inspection level or even at the state level of how to handle this. Just look at what happened to the flights yesterday. 82 flights had to be cancelled. Look at what Tamil Nadu has done. It says you must get an e-pass to go there, and that if you go to that e-pass site, it's almost impossible to navigate that site. So there are a lot of practical problems which are going to hold up this very, very big announcement. I will stop there, and I will leave it to Mr. Srinivasan to take me forward in any direction that you would like.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Narayanan. And I must say, a surprisingly positive and optimistic take on the situation. I'll just touch upon a couple of points that you made in your presentation, just to give a sort of a contrary view, so to speak. The viewers can weigh in on that later. First is that I actually strongly object to doing away, terming the doing away of labor laws as reform. That's not reform. Actually, implementation of labor laws in true letter and spirit would have been the real reform that we need. Globally, it has been established that where labor is basic rights are protected and there is a clear economic incentive, the response has always been in higher productivity and lower costs. One of the reasons for this huge migration of people desperately walking home 1,000 kilometers in the middle of the Indian summer is because of the complete lack of implementation of these laws and protections. So, but a failure to implement does not mean the law itself is bad. So I think that we need to do a lot more thinking on how we approach, this particular sector, and how we actually reform the system. Because I am of the view that you cannot build any kind of sustainable business unless every stakeholder in that business benefits, and the workers are principal stakeholders in any business. So unless there is a clear gain for them, I don't see that as a reform. Coming back to the larger question of the stimulus program and the plan expenditure, one of the criticisms of this package has been that the entire focus of the package has been on the supply side. And there has been nothing done on the demand side. But you cannot have simply supply being opened up without demand. Now, on the demand side, what is the reality? The reality is that in the rural economy, about only 35% of the people who asked for work under Manrega were actually able to secure work. 60% did not get anything. Although the Act provides that if you ask for work and you do not get it, the job card holder has to be given money equivalent to that amount by the government. That doesn't happen in practice. You have this exodus of workers, which means they are without a job, they are not earning anything, and they're not likely to start earning anything for quite some time to come. Millions of people were already out of that. But let's even look at the organized sector. What is happening in the organized sector? The reality is there have been fairly sharp reductions in workforce across the board in all types of industry, from the largely external market linked IT sector to the manufacturing sector to the BFSI sector to the services industry, particularly certain services industries like hospitality, travel, retail, tourism, which have been so badly hit that there already has been very widespread job losses. Where job losses haven't been, there have been certainly sharp reductions in pay cuts across the board. Almost every company I know has implemented some form of pay cut, has rationalized workforces, and so on. And this is something, again, which is not going to change in a hurry, which means that you're looking at really there's the so-called Indian middle class, which forms the base of our consumption economy, facing a future of definitely reduced income, greater job uncertainty, job and employment uncertainty, and increased pressure on its finances in terms of its overall indebtedness, which is not likely to induce a consumption orientation. And one of the criticisms of the package is that nothing has been done to also address this particular problem. So I would like you to perhaps share your thoughts on that. And finally, let's look at the sort of way forward. You've sort of wonderfully categorized the response into those three very aptly termed boxes, survival, revival, and future growth. So let's look a little bit at the third box, which is future growth. We are surviving, so let's take that as a success. Revival, all predictions do not show anything immediate in the in the offing in terms of a sharp revival. So, but what kind of a period are we looking at? There have been different alphabets thrown about: V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, W-shaped recovery, L-shaped recovery, and so on and so forth. But really speaking, in this alphabet soup, which one would you pick in terms of a return to this thing? The third is that even if all this happens, do we see actually the possibility of India returning to the pre-COVID normal trend growth line of about 7 to 7.5% GDP growth per year? So what is going to be the new normal trend GDP growth line is another issue perhaps you could look at. And then maybe I think we can go into some questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That's a fairly large remit, but let me explain myself. I don't, for a moment, I totally agree with you that removal of labor laws is not necessarily a reform. But if you look at the history of Indian industry for the last 30 years, the attempt has been to get around the labor laws by encouraging much more contract labor, much more info. Even you had a very big case in Maruti itself. So therefore, there is something wrong in our laws which make industry choose the back door and choose the back path. So is it possible to correct, let me not say remove the labor, is to correct the labor laws to ensure that industry is not advantaged by keeping people on an informal sector, and they are required to take them into a formal sector, whereby a lot of this migrant movement would not have arisen. I'm totally in agreement with you. So perhaps our labor laws need to be looked at in a manner that it becomes more favorable to labor, at the same time balanced, by which the industry can I would say progress. Demand side, totally. I think this is the continuous criticism we are getting day after day, that how is the demand going to come back? Okay, you can talk about demand of consumables, of agriculture products, of I would say rural sector. Certainly rural sector demand will come back because there is money in the rural areas, and usually they blow it up in weddings and temple festivals, which they are not able to do. So there will be capital investments in putting new bore wells and tractor sales. You could just look at the tractor sales; they are starting to pick up. Pump set sales are starting to pick up, etc. So there, the demand will definitely come up. But in the urban sector, particularly the capital goods sector, particularly I would not the capital, automobile engineering, which again Tamil Nadu depends on in a very, very big way. I see that we are quite far away. Pharmaceutical definitely will pick up. You will probably see that the FDA is starting to become a little more kind to the earlier. They were stopping a lot of our goods from going there. You will see many more relaxations happening. In fact, already our exports of pharmaceutical stuff has increased. And if you are able to integrate that value chain, I think you will see that sector. So I think revival, when you look at it, you will have to look at sector by sector. Some sectors are going to be changed. Real estate and construction sector, I don't see it jumping up in a matter of 2 months or 3 months or so, because people will be very, very careful about investing back there. But there are certainly sectors I can see. I would say certainly I can see pharmaceutical sector. I can see agriculture machinery sector. I can see anything to do with food and food processing sector. I can see logistics, etc. I can see all that starting to pick up fairly shortly. What it means in a large thing, I think personally, I don't believe in the GDP numbers in India, because I don't believe, because we don't measure. If 80% of your people are informal sector, okay, if a person is making, if he's making pakoras in a pakoda shop, I mean, what is his contribution to the GDP? It depends on what he gets paid. If paid 50 one day and 150 one day, it's very difficult. So I don't believe in the GDP as a number. I believe in sectoral growth. I believe in looking at states separately and believe in looking at sectoral growth separately. So, but you're absolutely right. Demand side, they should do very much more. And perhaps this is what Finance Minister is saying. Work in progress. Don't think I've said it all, because I am sure they are also worried if they are getting numbers, 7,000 numbers every day increasing. And if 7,000 numbers increasing and you're opening up the restrictions, trains and this thing, where it will go, I don't think they have answers yet. I don't think they have thought it through yet. So maybe they are keeping something up to prove. But you are absolutely right. Pre-COVID normal, no. I don't think you will go back. I think, for example, you take the huge IT and software sector. I think you'll go back to a situation where people work 2 or 3 days from home, only 2 or 3 days in office. Huge costs will come down. Travel costs will come down. Your office costs will come down. Your luncheon costs will come down. So you will see a different. You will see people. You will see this entire sector costing itself at a much lower level. Maybe they'll start doing it. You will see retrenchments in that sector. You will see people working at maybe lower numbers, working from home, support services sort of collapsing, etc. So you can go sector by sector and say, no, I would say no pre-COVID normal. It will be a new normal. The new normal, again, I go back to please think that the present ideology is not very encouraging of large business, because they genuinely believe that large business has let down the poor person. You must realize what they do about it. Of course, large business is intertwined with state politics. State politics is intertwined in national politics. Everybody requires money. Large business may have the muscle to get what it wants, but ideologically, there's a very big question mark.
I think that's a very, very interesting point. I'm tempted to ask you a couple of questions because you were Revenue Secretary, Finance Secretary, and you really know how the government works. You ran the finances of the government. So we have a situation today where the budget which was passed in February is totally irrelevant. The GDP growth numbers are wrong. The assumptions are no longer valid. But we haven't done anything about it. So the budget hasn't changed. And you know how the government works. So,
No, I agree. Mr. Chidambaram wrote last week that you should come out with a new budget. And I think he's absolutely right there. You should look at the numbers, because he has said you're not going to correct the taxes that you said you were going to collect. So you're going to spend more, you have to spend more. And so please come out with new numbers. There are certain programs that you're going to scrap and certain others alone that you're going to do. For example, you're going to restrict your defense spending. You're going to do something else. So please come out with a new budget. And I think it's a very, very good suggestion.
The second big point and issue really is center-state finances. Now, the states are at the forefront of the fight against COVID. Mr. Modi imposed the lockdown, but he has very cleverly left the exit from the lockdown in the hands of the states. And the states don't have any money. They had very little fiscal room to start with, even before COVID. The lockdown basically also impaired their three principal sources of revenue, which is taxes on alcohol, taxes on fuel, and stamp duty and registration. This largely account for a bulk of any state government's revenue on its own account, all of which got severely impacted. And then you have the question of nagging issue of GST compensation, which is running well behind what was promised, and actually it's committed to by an act of parliament. And the states are complaining that the center is not giving them enough money to fight the impact of the disease. So where do you see the solution to this? What do you think needs to be done immediately and going forward?
You see, states' revenues, I don't think as of today there is any state which is in a comfortable state. I mean, there are states like Telangana who are complaining that they don't have enough to pay salaries, and there are states like Kerala who actually don't have enough to pay salaries. But we have to, so in the short term, allowing the states to borrow more from 3% to 5%, they have given caveats, but I think these caveats will get slowly removed as states protest. These caveats will go away. That will give another 1,40,000 crores in the hands of the states, which is a substantial sum of money. And that borrowing is available today. Interest rates, repo rates have come down. It will be available to the states at lower rates than even 1 month ago. So this money has been permitted, and they have to remove these stoppers of doing power sector reforms and this and that, and states will just tell them that this is not the time to do all that. Let us go ahead with that. So I think this 2% is a very, very good margin. But I do think that this is also the time for the states to start looking at their expenditures. Is it necessary to give so many freebies, state after state after state? If you continue to give freebies, whatever you earn through GST, through trade, and through liquor is not going to be enough. You're just going to keep increasing, because GST is again a function of the GDP and the total trade. You're just going to keep increasing your cess on either petrol or liquor. And I think states should start thinking that is this the way to go? And I think this is where I would say people like you who are in the public media should really analyze state expenditures and say, okay, where is this money going, and is there a better way of spending this money? And that would be in the medium term.
Yes, I will now, I think, start asking some questions on behalf of the audience, as questions are coming in chat mode. There's a question, the last one, which just caught my eye right now, by somebody called Anjali. So, the question is, how do you see the present economic package affecting the environment, particularly in relation to energy (coal) and agriculture and renewable energy? Question. There's another question from Mr. Narayanan, and that's, I think, more directed at given your CV, which was shared with us at the start. Mr. Narayanan wants to know, is it that the finance ministry has not been able to match the grandeur of the Prime Minister's vision? Is it that they actually lack the expertise to execute? So, two questions to start off the debate.
The first on the environment and renewable energy, we have benefited by the COVID. You can see the Jamuna is cleaner. You can see the Ganges is very much cleaner. Polluting industries have been stopped. So we know the origins of dirt. The origins of filth. It should become so much more easier now to implement the Ganga program or the Clean Jamuna program, because you know exactly what has been stopped and what's making it cleaner. So I would say you should grab this as an opportunity. And the renewable energy, I think also coal consumption has also come down. And the coal plants are, perhaps, I don't know the numbers, are running at much lower rates. So I think the push towards solar energy, and I think it will grow. It will grow in multiples. And I think it will be a very, 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 very good thing. On the finance ministry, this implementation, implementation has been a problem for the entire. In fact, I can well imagine that the Prime Minister is so fed up with people of my capability. He's saying that, what rubbish. Because, I'll give you a very simple example of the demonetization. Demonetization, okay, they changed the size of the notes, all right. So, of the new notes, would not somebody think that the ATMs have to be recalibrated before the new notes are put in? Does it require rocket science? So obviously, implementation capability down the line is abysmal. And among I would say, me and all my colleagues, it's absolutely abysmal. And we could have done with the same ideas, better implemented, we would be flying now.
Unfortunately, yes, that's been the thing. There's a question from Mr. Ramji of the Coimbatore Management Association, Mr. Ramji, I think, it's specifically talking about the foundry industry, which is quite a large presence there. He says there are two problems. One is that the employers are in the lurch because they had actually invested a lot in their labor, he says, in training skills, etc. And now the migrant labor have left and they have no idea when they will come back. So that's problem number one. The other problem is that the restrictions imposed now post-COVID. Certain industries like foundries cannot work with even 50% of the labor available because there are certain jobs which just need a gang, of labor. You cannot go below a certain number to actually carry out your work. So he wants to know, how do you manage? What could be a good strategy for the new normal?
He may be very interested in what the Uttarakhand government has done just now. They have analyzed, looked at, carried out a survey of all the migrant labor who have come back, categorized them into skilled, highly skilled, unskilled, and also created a category people who are likely to go back because those kind of skilled jobs are not available in the states, and people who are likely to stay. Very interesting analysis that that little state has done. And I think this is what will happen, that a state needs to look at the people coming back and say, certain skill categories I cannot provide jobs for, so let me encourage them to go back wherever they wanted. So the state should actually encourage them back into this thing. I mean, it's a state-to-state negotiation, whatever it is, it has to. I mean, I would call it that there should be a cell in each state for dealing with migrant labor issues. There are people who are going to come back and who are going to take a rest for 3 or 4 months. They're going to live off the family and live off the land. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen. There are going to be some sectors which will see a boom. Nursing will see a boom. I would say all the hospital-related activity will see a boom. So you'll have different kind of migrant labor happening. So yes, skill analysis becomes very, very important to this. This 50% is, as I said before, is a hugely implementation problem. The state governments, and especially even below the state government, the industries officer, the district industries officer must understand that certain companies cannot work at this and must give the relaxation. I'll give you just one small example. There is a company in just on the border to Pudukkottai, 8 miles from the Trichy airport, when the people come from Trichy. Now the district authorities are saying every time you go for work, you have to have 14 days quarantine. I mean, how is it possible? They can't go to work and come back. So these kind of routes need to be sorted out.
Right. Mr. Sundar has asked as many as 6 questions. I'm not going to take all of them, but a couple of interesting ones. One, he wants to know, and specifically from you, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. This is a question which has come from Facebook and YouTube. Sundar is my staff who collected and put it actually. It will come on the WhatsApp number. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So, a question from the audience then. Will you support any move for India using the occasion to lead a South Asian economic recovery from the front and use it as an opportunity to develop a robust regional mechanism like ASEAN and EU, and putting Pakistan and other political considerations on the back burner? That's one question. And the other question is, can you please crystal gaze and tell us how the global economy will look like in 2025 and where do you see India fitting in there?
Well, the second one is easier. And 2025, we will be back on the roads. Absolutely. Because we have a lot of things going for us. And what are the things going for us? As long as we have a robust agricultural production and our food safety is assured and we can start looking at exporting food grains and all that, then you have a huge multiplier effect coming in. If you improve our health and education infrastructure, then I am sure I think we are going to get a lot of foreign investment coming in the next 4 or 5 years. So 5 years, we are fine. World economy, I think it will go back. It will go back to again in slightly a new normal, a different normal. The other question, actually, I am not really competent to handle. I don't do, I would say, international relations. I think Mr. Srinivasan, you can answer that much better than I do. So, is there an opportunity? India went for the non-aligned summit after so many years. I mean, so you should answer that.
Yes, I will attempt that. I do, I think the SARC potential remains one of the great unrealized opportunities, economic opportunities in the region. There is a potential because if you look at it, between the SARC region, we have the markets, we have the populations, we have the skills, we have the natural resources to create an enormous economic engine, which needn't even look outward to sustain the consumption cycle. Looking between India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, we're looking at a population which is 1.5 times China's. We have the resources, we have the skills, but politics has always come in the way, and that is not something which I see changing in a hurry. So particularly in view of the larger global trend against globalization, which one sees. In fact, Mr. Peter Rimmel in his opening remarks used a very interesting term, gated globalization. So, it's actually the situation is that you are globalized, your economies are globalized because there is no other alternative model available today. There isn't, basically we are driven by transnational businesses and linkages. So global value chains is the order of the day. But every country, no matter how big or how small, is trying to put up gates to try and sort of conserve it, try and trap some of that value within its own borders. And I think this is a more larger and more secular trend which is playing itself out, along with certain similar trends in the political field, in the kind of quality of or style of leadership that you see, which people are voting for in different countries, different types of democracies, and the larger commonality of a global vision, if I may say, amongst these strongman leaders, which is largely driven by very strong focus on nationalism, on self-reliance, on economic independence from real and perceived external enemies. So these are part of the larger trend. So I don't see the SARC dream really playing itself out. The potential is certainly there, but political challenges, because European Union worked because not just of cultural and economic integration, but largely also a shared political worldview, sort of liberal democratic worldview, which is common to the member states, and that's how they could achieve both the economic and political union. I don't think that those conditions are replicable in other parts of the world, so I don't see that happening.
Good.
So we've reached the end of our allotted time. So I would just like to thank you, Dr. Narayanan. Thank you, Group Captain Vijay Kumar and the Madras Management Association. I have certainly found it a very, very engrossing hour and a half of discussions. I hope our audience enjoyed it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. And now we have Mr. Pankaj and Peter, Ravi. Before we pack up, I can squeeze in another 5 minutes. Do you have any question for both the speakers? Mr. Narayanan, do you have any questions, sir? Or even I see Mr. Siddharth Vardarajan also there, founder of Wire, and he was a Hindu editor. We had a close connection with him. Siddharth, do you have any question? We'll be more than happy to take it. Yes, Mr. Peter, please go ahead.
I would have a question. Dr. Narayan, I come back to one of your own questions where you said, how is demand coming back? Now, probably you don't have in mind to have a stimulus package for consumption, but for India, it would mainly mean domestic consumption has to go up. And that would also mean the purchasing power has to go up. And how could that be addressed? Probably not a stimulus package for consumption. It's not sustainable. But could, that's my question, a reform of the labor market with the goal to have this 90% or a large proportion of people in the informal sector be more formalized, stabilize their income, and that way increase purchasing power and then the demand?
Absolutely, absolutely. You need to have labor laws which will encourage companies to take more people in a formal environment rather than keep them in an informal environment. So you need to change your labor laws in a manner which encourages companies to do that. And after many years, I am seeing a glimmer of hope. They have gone the wrong way of stopping all the labor laws, but I think it will come back to something like that. But really, if the government one day decides that they want to encourage demand, stimulate demand, there has to be cash dole-outs in the short term. Whatever happens to the fisc, you have to come up with a program where you simply put money in the hands of the people, short term, long term, hoping some of them will never come back, but especially the spenders, so you sweeten the spending cycle in a manner in which that has to happen. And I am sure that the government is holding this up its sleeve at the moment.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else before we move on? Otherwise, I have one last question for you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, let me go ahead. In your budget talk at MMA War, if you recollect earlier this year, you made a pointed reference to your ideological orientation. You spoke quite a lot about it. Is the PM self-reliance call for Atmanirbhar is the step in towards that direction, sir?
I do think that it is part of a large canvas, but at the moment it is driven equally by economic considerations, because we suddenly found, even for manufacture of things like N95 masks, that we require crucial things from outside. And this doesn't make sense. We could make the ventilators considerably cheaper than what we are importing, but we lack some crucial parts of it. So I think he's woken up to the fact that this kind of a dependence for core sectors on external doesn't make sense at all. But remember, this is happening all over the world. Every economy is saying that, okay, I must reduce dependence. We cannot all be dependent on one country alone for everything.
Thank you, sir. Satyamurthy, before we close, do you would like to add something? Okay. Thank you so much, sir. It's been a fascinating evening as usual. It's always so great to listen to you. And thank you, Dr. Narayanan and Mr. Srinivasan, for coming together, because two economists and sharing the great insight on, because there's so much of hope on PM's economic package. So there are a lot of questions. I think we have over 800 viewers on our YouTube and Facebook and webinar. There are a lot of questions that come which you have put together, and I think we could answer most of the questions. If you had answered all the questions, we may have to sit here till about another 1 hour. We have more than 30 questions there, but most of the questions which has been raised there, you've been addressed to by you, sir. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, privilege, and honor to have you MMA. Thanks, Mr. Peter Rimmel, for taking your time to be to deliver introductory remarks. Pankaj, thanks so much. And Satyamurthy, you've been always a great partner for us, bringing together, we are able to present some great events. We are already planning together to bring in some outstanding speakers on varied subject. Thank you, Ravi, for I know how busy you are putting back your industry into right time and joining us. Added tremendous value to this evening program. Thank you, viewers who have come in large number in Facebook, YouTube, and I must apologize. We are not able to admit everybody to Zoom due to a lot of security restrictions have been placed on us. We check the gate, but there were a lot of security people, the name and the email ID. That's one of the reasons. But you will enjoy as much as you are watching on Zoom, because all the things are there for you to watch uninterruptedly on thing. Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure till we meet again. Good night, and keep the safe distance, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Narayanan.